With the recent news that Fallout 5 most likely isn't coming out until an actual nuclear apocalypse, I decided that I was going to go back and see about playing the first couple of Fallout games. See, when I was a kid, I played Fallout 1 for about 30 minutes before moving on to other things, and I never had the opportunity to play 2. Since I've been able to play them, however, they've quickly become some of my favorite games in the series. I can suddenly see why so many people loved them. I just wish I had been able to appreciate them when I was a lot younger. And while I want my friends to also be able to enjoy these games, it can be really difficult to try to convince them when the game, well, looks like this. Not to say that the game looks bad by any means, but let's be fair, in comparison to a lot of modern titles, it can be really hard to get someone to go all the way back to something like 1997's Fallout. So to help coax them into getting into it, as well as potentially helping out newer players who want to get into the old series, I decided to make a video guide that you can follow along with at home if you really want to. So first up, when you start a new game, you're going to be given the choice of a few pre-made characters. While these are perfectly acceptable choices, if you don't want to put any effort into making a character, we're still going to make our own. After naming yourself something incredible and choosing what sex you are, you're presented with a ton of information that can be overwhelming. But don't worry, it's not as hard as it looks initially. If you've played a Fallout game before, you're very aware of Special and how it applies to your character. It's not much different here. Strength modifies your hit points, the damage of your melee, and carry weight. Perception affects your sequence, which is your initiative in this game, as well as the hit modifiers for ranged combat. Since the character I'm going to be recommending is ranged, this is going to be fairly important. Endurance is connected to your hit points, radiation and poison resistance, as well as how much you heal when you're resting, and the amount of hit points you gain per level. Charisma is a dump stat. Like a lot of the other Fallout games, you're pretty much used to charisma always being super low. Intelligence, however, is exactly the opposite. Again, like a lot of the other Fallout games, they're tied to the amount of skill points that you can get per level. This should never, ever be a dump stat, except in very specific situations, which I might actually make a guide on as well. Agility should also never be a dump stat. Ever. Agility governs the amount of action points that you have. Action points are what you use to perform actions in combat. Everything from shooting to moving to pooping costs points. If you don't have enough points, your partner is going to leave you. They're going to take the house, the kids, the money in the bank, all while you're waiting on your next turn to finish that poop because they invested in their agility while you thought it was just a useless stat. Don't ever neglect it. If you do and you think you found some sort of incredible new way to play, I'm going to turn the mirror around so I can show you a liar. Luck is also pretty important, but not as important as agility or intelligence. In Fallout 1, luck determines not just criticals, but also the failure chance of your skills and the random encounters you come across while you're traveling the world map. Next, we move on to traits. Traits are bonus flavors that you can add to your character to spice them up a little. Things that give you handy boosts while hobbling something else that you might need. Most of them aren't that great, but a handful of them are incredible and should be included in most builds. Fast metabolism makes you less resistant to poison and radiation, but allows you to heal limbs faster. I can't say as I've ever broken a single limb in this game, even with the reckless way that I play, so I can't comment on the efficacy of this trait. I can't imagine it being a worthwhile pick. Bruiser, despite having some of my favorite Vault Boy art, is one of the worst picks you could make here. Your action points are lowered when you take this, which, as we know, is a big no-no. Also, the trade-off is for a little bit of strength, which it's really easy to get strength in this game, as you'll come to find out as this guide goes on. Small frame is a pretty decent trait, and while it means that you bought the ladies' pants and discovered that the pockets are fake so you can't carry as much, it does mean that you get an increase in your agility, which in turn increases your action points, which is good. It also allows you to invest another point in a stat if you so choose. Also, you look bangin' in those pants. One-hander doesn't just mean you're really good at punching the clown, it also means that your one-handed weapons are just inherently better. You get a small bonus to hit with these kinds of weapons, and while I can see how this would be useful, there are too many two-handed weapons that are just really good to pass up. But I could see that a build around pistols could make this a pretty decent pick. Finesse is just good. The damage reduction is minuscule in the face of the increased chance to cause critical hits. Couple this with luck and a few other perks and you'll be finding the crit in no time. Kamikaze I'm sure works on some kind of build, but the ability to act in initiative sooner just doesn't seem to matter if it lowers your armor class. Less armor means you're hit more. Hit more means dead. Dead means no matter how soon you arrive to the party, everyone still has to deal with your stinking corpse. Heavy-handed is a perk that I could see balancing out a little with luck or other perks. It's possible the damage boost can make up for the lack of times you punch a hole into someone, but for melee-focused builds, I could see this one as being a relatively solid choice. Fast Shot is okay in the action point-heavy economy. In fact, it can be great for pistol builds since you get to fire so many times in a turn, but it does take away something pretty solid, which is the ability to aim your shots. And much like in newer Fallouts with the VAT system, you can target specific parts of a creature for certain effects. Taking that away doesn't seem very worth it in the long run, especially for the kind of build that we're going for. Bloody Mess does nothing that having strong crits won't do. Hey, maybe if you're not too worried about min-maxing your character, you'll snag this just to enjoy all the bodily explosions. Jinxed is like rolling a divination wizard in Dungeons & Dragons but having dice more cursed than a pharaoh's tomb. You can make super unfortunate things happen to others just by your mere presence, but they'll also happen just as often to you in hilarious ways. This isn't a first pick trait for sure, but if you're on your other character or subsequent one, you're definitely going to want to try this one out, at least for the giggles. Good-natured seems good on paper, but in practice, it's not so great. Lower combat skills for skills that aren't that useful in the game except for speech. You frankly will find yourself doing more fighting than anything else, so the trade-off here doesn't really seem that great, especially when you can just tag speech and call it a day. Chem Reliant is for those who want the Hunter S. Thompson experience without the hassle. You get addicted to chems a lot faster, but you also recover from them faster, which I can see there being an advantage in to not being a junkie, but I never really found myself using too many chems. Maybe a combat-heavy playthrough I could see being relatively useful, but it also just feels like a wasted trait. Chem Resistant is Chem Reliant, but flipped. Instead of getting over addiction faster, you resist it more, but the chems are only half as effective, which seems somehow way worse. Night Person is one of those traits that I just shrug my shoulders at and ask why. If you're trying to roleplay a creature of the night, you could just play Bloodlines. The fact that you lose intelligence and perception stats during the day makes this pretty silly overall, especially if you've bothered to raise them to 10 when they can be raised no more. Skilled is terrible. You find enough skill books to raise them, and you have enough skill points throughout the game that you get to raise the ones that you want and then some. The fact that this also means that your perks only come every 4 levels as opposed to 3 just makes this way worse. Taking away something as vital as perks, I simply can't fathom why you would ever take this unless you have really bad indecisiveness. Gifted, meanwhile, is broken. Gifted is utterly busted, therefore making it one of the best traits you can choose. It gives you 1 extra special point in all of your stats, while decreasing your skills by 10%. Considering the amount of skill books that you get and the books that you can find to raise most of your skills, as well as the thresholds for a lot of the skills to be effective, means that Gifted is one of the best returns on investment, and possibly the best trait in the game. Finally, we move on to the skills themselves, and most of these are fairly self-explanatory. Small guns are for rifles, pistols, and little booms. Big guns are for miniguns, rocket launchers, and bigger booms. Energy weapons are for anything that makes a pew-pew sound. Unarmed is if you want to recreate the movie Bloodsport. Melee weapons are for recreating the movie Oldboy. Throwing is if you want to win the Olympic shot put with grenades. First aid is for giving your boo-boos the mommy kisses they need to get better. Doctor determines how long limbs will heal and make your parents proud. Sneak is to break into the girl's dormitory. Lockpick for when you leave your keys in your car. Steal to see what other people are hiding in their pants. Traps to try to disarm pressure plates. Science to finally decode the human genome. Repair is useful for anything that isn't your previous relationship. Barter to get you better pricing. Gambling lets you get money. And Outdoorsman is useless. Seriously, its usefulness is debatable, as it only reduces the damage you take by not being able to find water or having rocks fall on you while you travel the map. It's dumb. Don't invest in this. Ever. So help me God. So the build we're going for is something like this. Mr. Chungus is going to take the Gifted and Finesse traits. We're going to have a 6 in Strength, 8 Perception, 4 Endurance, 2 Charisma, 9 Intelligence, 9 Agility, and finally 9 Luck. The skills we're tagging are Small Guns, Lockpick, and Speech. And the way we're going to be investing in these is we're going to be getting Small Guns to at least 85, Speech somewhere to 90 or above, and Lockpicking we're going to invest every so often. While we're here, make sure your Science is at least up to 40% as soon as you get to the first town, and also you're probably going to want to make sure that your Gambling hits 60 at some point. Also, if you really want to save this build or any build that you make, you can do so by going to the options, which is really kind of nice. But with all that done, it's time to dive headfirst into the world of the Wasteland. So when we start out, Dr. Zayas here tells us that the water chip in our vault committed die, and it's up to us to go find a new one. For whatever reason, we're the only ones that can do this, and therefore must head to the location of another vault to see if they have a cup of water chip we could borrow. To do so, we have to tread across the post-nuclear hellscape of Northern California, which I'm convinced is just regular California, but with Australia-sized insects. When we emerge, we find ourselves another post-nuclear hellscape to adjust our eyes to, which is the UI that Fallout uses. Once you get used to it, it isn't so bad, but it can be pretty daunting to look at, especially when compared to more modern games and their modernized UIs. To break it down into parts, we're going to start with the big screen-looking thing to the left. This is an information window where, oddly enough, information is popped in. Whenever you enter areas, inspect something, or enter combat, this window will provide you with a lot of information. So make sure that you check it out whenever it updates. Next is the inventory button, where all the crap you're holding in your trousers appears. You can also get here by pressing I on your keyboard. This is also where you equip your various weapons and armors that you find while you're out and about. This is also where you can gain information on weapon damage and the items that you're carrying. Below that is the options menu, where you can find your save and load as well as your preferences and the ability to exit the game. While we're here, I kind of want to touch on the preferences just a tiny bit. Some of the most helpful ones are increasing the speed at which combat goes to help you get through combat a lot faster, but one of the most important ones that I want to point out is the difficulty knobs. See, Fallout is an old game, and by proxy, it's a relatively difficult game. A lot of games back in these days had a difficulty to them, and this one has an adjustable one. And I'm going to tell you this right now, there's absolutely no shame in cranking this one down to the lowest setting. Fallout is, to me, an RPG first, and so therefore it's going to be a lot better in the long run if we go ahead and just play it for the story. You're not going to regret it, and honestly, if you want a harder challenge, you can always come back and play it on hard if you really want to once you've gotten used to things. Speaking of this being an older game, there are no autosaves. So it's recommended that whenever you complete a task or something like that, you save your game so you don't lose your progress. Saving before you make decisions or traveling somewhere can be the difference between going back a few minutes or going back a few hours in terms of your progress. Please, please save often. Next up, this big red button here swaps between your two held items. This can be super handy in the middle of combat because you can get a more suitable weapon out and it costs 0 action points to use. The big box in the middle is your current weapon or item that you're holding. You can click this box to enter combat mode, and your mouse will change into a small red crosshair. You can also see enemies in your direct vicinity and see what your hit chance percentage when you mouse over them is. If you're using an item, it will do the same, but it'll turn into a yellow crosshair and not put you into combat mode. To the right, you're going to see a small green line that represents the amount of ammo you have left in your magazine, and above that, the number of remaining action points that you have. Also, if you right-click this box, you can go into a VATS system, where you can aim your shots. This can be really handy for targeting specific places that are weaker on some enemies. You can also see your current remaining hit points, as well as your current armor class. The other big red button is the skill dex. This is a list of usable skills that you have available to you that you can perform on various objects. These 8 skills are also tied to the number keys on the keyboard for quicker selection, in the order that they're listed, with 1 being sneak, 2 being lockpick, and etc. You also have a map, which is quite possibly one of the most useless things I've ever used. Below that is your character sheet, where you can find out various info about your character, as well as level them whenever you hit a new level. Your Pip-Boy gives you information, such as current objectives, maps of areas, archives of cutscenes, as well as the ability to rest for a certain amount of time. With all that out of the way, it's time to start our quest to find the water chip. One of the first things you need to do is select the bones nearby of Ed, who's dead. On his body, he can have extra things. In our case, he's got extra ammo and a knife. You can't dual wield, but you can keep the knife for the purposes of selling later on when we find a merchant. While you're in these caves, use this opportunity to get used to how combat is performed and how you change your movement and interact cursor with the right mouse button. I'd suggest also using the knife to conserve ammo, since you're not going to be in any sort of immediate danger. If you get hit, don't really worry about using stim packs. Unless you well and truly screw up or God decides he's going to smite you, you shouldn't need to heal if you stick and move. When you find a rat, cut him twice with the knife and then run away. As long as you have 3 AP remaining, you can run away from the rats and they can't reach you and attack at the same time. By using this strategy, you'll be able to clear this cave of rats and net yourself a fairly decent starting chunk of XP. Don't leave these caves yet, however. Bring up your Pip-Boy once you've completed the rat genocide and use the wait function to wait until midnight. Once this happens, you can head over to the console next to the vault door and waltz right back in. While you're here, pilfer the contents of the nearby locker on the wall, and then go speak to the medic near the entrance to heal your wounds if you sustained any rat bites. After that, head for the elevator to the left of the map and head up to the 3rd floor to do some light research on the computers. The 2 that we need are in the far left room, at the front and the rear of this room. Use them to get some important info off of them as well as some XP. This should actually get you enough to level right now. Invest those points however you wish, but I suggest pumping them into your tag skills for right now. Head over to the right of the map where you'll see a lone guard in front of a door. When you speak to them, make sure to ask them why a vault needs a locked door. Ask who has access, and when they respond, tell them that it sounds like only the people who really need access have it. Then you have only one option to try to get in. Select it to attempt a speech check. If you fail, don't worry, you can try again until the guard gives in to your constant need for attention, and then lets you get into the secret goodie room. In here, you'll find a number of helpful things on your journey in the 3 boxes. One has a lot of knives you can sell later, the second has a shotgun and some shells, the third a bunch of ammo and another pistol for us to sell as well. Once you've pumped this room for stuff, it's time to go whine to Big Daddy Overseer to get yet more things for our journey. Make sure you mention about leaving the vault when you speak to him, before you tell him that you haven't been able to track down the chip. He'll ask if you need an advance on your bullet allowance and some stim packs. Naturally you do, despite not even having left the cave. Now that you've exploited the Overseer, it's time to squash a rebellion in the making. Head to the 2nd floor and talk to some of your fellow dwellers. When they ask how it's going, tell them it ain't going so well, and they'll say they knew it. They'll mention you should talk to Teresa at a 5 o'clock meeting that everyone's going to. Waiting's for chumps, though. We can just go straight over to her and convince that little firebrand that the Overseer is just trying to protect the sweet baby angels of the vault from the outside world that would tear them in half. She'll agree, and you'll get a sweet 750 XP for helping the Overseer do his own job. Now we can exit the caves and head into the overworld map. Vault 15 is way to the east, so you can either click its physical location or the button on the right of the map. Click on either one and you'll start moseying your way through the desert until you come across a previously unknown settlement. Stop here because this is where we're going next. This is Shady Sands, as the guard indicates. If you arrive with a weapon in your hand, the guard will politely ask you to put it away. It's a good idea to empty your weapon hand when you talk to an NPC, because most of the time they don't really like to have a gun or a knife drawn on them. It can usually send the wrong message. You can speak to Seth the guard and get some information, but who we're really interested in is the woman next to him, Katrina. Ask her all the questions in the world and she's going to give us 250 XP for being such nosy Nellies. Once we're done with them, we can start purloining goods from these fine, trusting people. Head to the nearby house first and check the bookshelves for some sweet, sweet ammo. Now we're going to talk to the Snake Plissken-looking guy over here named Ian, who can give us the location of towns we'll be needing to go to, the Hub and Junktown. You can also convince him to follow you for 100 caps, or you can promise him a piece of the action if your intelligence is high enough, and he'll just be duped right into following you then. This is what you want to do, and you're also going to want Ian, because he is really good to have early on. With your new mule in tow, head to the south to the next house to steal the Outdoorsman book off the shelf. You can sell for some extra caps, or you can use it to increase your outdoorsman skill if you're nasty. Next in the southmost house, you're going to meet Raslo, the local doctor. You can get healed if you want, or you can tell him you're poisoned, and he'll say you need to suck it up because he can't do nothing about it. Plop down a save here and teach him a lesson by stealing everything you can off the shelf behind he and his wife. They'll tell you not to touch it, but don't listen to them and keep trying until they turn hostile and you get punched in the jaw by his wife. At that point, command time and space and reload your save to try again until you get the goods off of his shelf. This includes 5 stim packs, a first aid kit, a doctor's kit, and a book on first aid you can study if you want or use to sell for other books instead. In the next building to the east, you'll meet the big cheese around here, Aradesh. Now here's something very important about talking to NPCs. Be nice. Just like in real life, if you're a jerk to someone, they're probably not going to want to talk to you anymore, and they're definitely not going to want to help you with anything. This can close you off to a lot of things in the game, so try to keep your baser animal instincts in check and just be cool with the NPCs in the game. Aradesh will ask you to take care of the rat scorpion problem in the nearby caves. You can ask for money, but he gets a little pissy about that, so just agree to do it and he'll have an orgasm.
Yes, please.
After you speak to him, head down to the bottom of his house and take the knife and stim pack off the shelf. You can also take the rocks here if you really want to, but if you do, you're kind of a weirdo. While you're about, you can also speak to his daughter Tandy, who's a bored kid with absolutely no future. She'll tell you all about the happenings around town, which, according to her, is not a lot. With all that out of the way, we can head over to the east side of town and talk to a local farmer about his crops. If your science is over 40%, which it should be, you can convince him that he needs to try crop rotation, a practice that humans have done for thousands of years, which has mysteriously been forgotten about since the bombs fell. You get 500 XP for being a helpful soul. You can then prove how much more helpful you are by going into a nearby building and stealing the rope and book off the shelves that are in here. Save that rope, by the way. It's integral to future plans. The final thing we're going to do in Shady Sands is taking as much of everyone's caps and crap as we can. Now that our pants are hung heavy with purpose, we can head to Aradesh, Raslo, as well as Katrina and barter with them to get their caps in exchange for the things that we have. The flares and knives that we've got laying around are perfect for this. If we go over the amount that they want of their stuff by a little, don't worry too much about it. The only time that amount at the bottom really matters is when you're short and not vice versa. With their money in your pocket, it's time to talk to Seth about taking care of their scorpion problem. When you arrive at the caves, make sure you save and start moving into the caves to find your friendly neighborhood arachnids. Equip the shotgun in your spare slot just in case they get too close as well. When you find one, press the A key or use the gun box in the center of the screen to engage them before they can engage you, so you can go first. This will allow you to get a shot off before you engage in the ancient Joestar's secret art of running away while Ian does the heavy lifting. Somewhere around here, you're most likely to hit level 3. When you do, if you're following along with our build, you'll get your first trait. My advice here is pick awareness. In fact, my advice is to always pick up awareness. It gives you invaluable data when you inspect enemies. It allows you to know how much HP they have left, how much ammo they have left in their weapons, the kind of ammo they use, what their star sign is, and the kinds of things that they like to do on a first date. Things that can help you on your way to becoming a more efficient destroyer of Wasteland horrors. Another point to make here is during the fighting, occasionally something will get all up in your grill, prompting you to pull out the war crime stick. When this happens, right-click on your gun's icon, just like I showed you earlier, to make an aim shot. My advice, follow old Uncle Minska's advice and go for the eyes for massive damage and to make your opponent run away. Also during this fight, you're going to notice that you have a third option after you've expended some ammo, which is reloading. This costs 2 AP, and whenever you have a spare 2 AP you're not using, it's pretty much a good idea to reload compulsory like Call of Duty. You can also reload out of battle, which makes the whole process easier, so be sure to remember this before you engage another enemy. After you've cast the bullet spell on every living thing in the cave, you'll get 500 XP. Be sure to get some scorpion tails while you're here so you can make antidotes. It's okay to keep some for selling, but they're really not worth a whole lot, so it's really better just keep them for antidotes. Head back to Shady Sands and let Aradesh know that the city of Townsville is safe and everyone can rest easy knowing they never have to deal with another rad scorpion ever again. While you're here, go chat with the doctor as well about creating an antidote. The only time you can't do this is at night, because apparently he gets really cranky when he hasn't had enough sleep. If you need to, wait until the morning. But the thing is if you wait until morning like the Pip-Boy asks, he's still going to be asleep, so you need to wait an additional 2 hours. Can't begin to tell you why. People in the Wasteland just have really weird hours, I guess. Once you have at least 3 antidotes in your pants, head into the back room of the doctor's house where you can find a guy named Jarvis laying in bed. Give him a little bit of that juice that makes you explode and he'll jump up and say hallelujah. Not really, but he will give you 400 XP and you'll feel better about yourself. Now that we're done here in Shady Sands for a little bit, we can head over to Vault 15. When you arrive, you see a nondescript shack with a ladder in it. Heading down to the ladder, you'll find a cave that's not too dissimilar from the one you began the game in. It's infested with rats, which you can take care of if you want, but our major target here is the big boy just down the hall to the vault's entrance. If you go into attack mode, you can see his outline and take a shot before he even gets a chance to do anything. Once the big boy is dead, check a locker nearby for some flares, and then head to the elevator, or rather where the elevator used to be. There's more flares on the ground here that you can snag. Once that's done, use the rope on the elevator shaft so that way you can head down to the next place for more rat killing and more pillaging. On the second floor, it's more rats and more rats and more rats, but you also find some 223 ammo in the north. Near the bottom, you find a locker with some rope as well as a Mel Gibson cosplay. Slap that baby on because that's your first bit of armor for this game that pumps your AC up by almost double its original value. There's a room beside it where you can find some more 223 ammo on the ground. Next, you're going to want to use the rope that we found so we can get down that elevator shaft to get to the third floor. Down here, it's more rats for you to kill along with some more lockers for you to plunder. There's also a big lad in here, so make sure you have your shotgun equipped to give him forced head pats and subdue him. Down here, while you're fighting your way through enough rats to make John B. Calhoun wonder where it all went wrong, you'll find some items of use in the locker, including some dynamite, frag grenades, and the holy relic known as the submachine gun. You're going to want to equip this guy, because it's good. See, it does burst damage, which, while it chews through your ammo, can cause things to suddenly explode in their own blood and viscera, and can sometimes end a fight if each of those bullets crits. Don't use the burst too liberally, or you'll be out of ammo soon before you know it. But when things are very close and you don't have access to your shotgun, it's a really good option. While you're thinking about it, you can also go to your unequipped pistols in your inventory and empty out their magazines for extra ammo, a nifty little trick that some people forget. Head to the left to the last room and go up to find a locker that has some 44 Magnum ammunition to sell or use later. Once that's done, head to the far right of the map along the bottom to discover this place might be slightly bunko, and that there's no way you can get a water chip from here. As a side note, you may level up somewhere in this vault, and when you do, I recommend you get your gambling up to 60 with some of your points. The goals of this are beyond your reasoning for right now, but trust in the plan. With this done, head back up and we're going to schlep our way back over to Shady Sands. When you return, either speak to Aradesh or Seth and you'll find out that Tandy got kidnapped by a bunch of raiders and they're holding her hostage. Agree to rescue her and make sure you stop by Razlo to get some supplies. Sometimes they'll still be hung up on rad scorpions, and this usually happens if you have tails in your inventory. So pickpocket your best friend and give them to him. This will allow you to tell Razlo that Tandy got Amber alerted. You'll get some stim packs for free in doing this. Now we head for the raiders, and there's a few ways we can handle this. We head into the big building here in the center of the map and talk to Garl. From here we can try to convince him that we're the hash-slinging slasher and that he needs to fear us. If our speech is high enough, he'll agree and let Tandy free. You can also barter for her freedom by giving him items of equal value. The dynamite that we found earlier, along with the spear Aradesh gave us from the raiders and the fruit that Razlo handed us, make a good enough sum to get her freedom. Our third option is if we have a pretty good unarmed, we can demand a 1v1 Final Destination Fox vs. Fox no items Garl for Tandy's freedom. It's great if you can punch real hard, but not so great if you haven't been hitting the gym recently because this guy has 80 health and will absolutely kill you even though he says there's no killing in baseball. You can also roll up to this place and just start blasting, but there's enough of them to cause a real problem and we're probably too low level to do this effectively. If you really want your blood, you can always come back later to do a little bit of a steamroll. Also, if you have a high sneak, you can come back here and try to get Tandy out the back door, but I've never really had this succeed even when I have actually tried, so I just never really do this. The final and most unique way of getting Tandy free can only be done if your character is male and you have a high luck stat. Turns out old Garl killed his pappy to become leader of the Khans. There's a chance that when you come in here, everyone will think you're the vengeful spirit of Garl's father come to claim your rightful place. You can use this as leverage to get Tandy back. It's a unique way to solve this problem to be sure, and pretty hilarious to watch everyone freak out over your presence. Either way you solve this issue, when you head back to Shady Sands, you'll get 900 XP collectively for bringing her back, and Aradesh will give you 500 caps. You can also try to put the moves on Tandy, but she's not that kind of girl, and she's probably underage, so you should stay where you are because the FBI is on its way. With everything done, we've only just started our journey into the Wastes. In the next video, we're going to be hitting a few major areas, performing some thrilling heroics, as well as exploiting gambling, so that way we can become filthy rich. If you've enjoyed this video and watched up to this point, consider giving a subscribe or even hitting that like button. Make sure to ring that bell for whatever reason. If you like my voice or you just like what I do in general and you want to see more Fallout or other games that I play, you can head over to twitch.tv/AppleBandito to see what I'm up to. I stream every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. Until then, guys, everyone have fun, and I'll see you in the next guide as we journey to save our vault.